Hello, and welcome to this powerful episode of the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects so many women, yet often overlooked: intergenerational trauma and healing. In this episode, we'll explore the deep and lasting impact that trauma can have, not just on the mother, but on generations to come. How does unresolved trauma from parents, grandparents shape our health, well-being, and emotional development for future generations? And more importantly, how do we break that cycle and create a more healthier, balanced future? Our guest today, Niketa, will share insights on how trauma affects maternal health, effects it has on our children, and practical ways to heal and prevent intergenerational trauma from being passed down. So whether you're a mother, parent-to-be, or someone interested in understanding the deeper connections between health, hormones, and healing, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. So grab a seat, take a deep breath, and let's start on this journey of healing and empowerment together. Hello, Niketa. Welcome back to my podcast. So Niketa Pecan is a Jamaican-American therapist turned maternal wellness consultant and a travel culture storyteller. She is rooted in ancestral wisdom of Sankofa, the call to return to what grounds and guides us. Niketa bridges healing, heritage, and holistic living through the lens of maternal health and community care. With the heart of mothers and the systems that shape their care, Niketa advocates for radical rest, emotional resilience, and trauma-informed support across the perinatal journey. She specializes in guiding organizations and communities towards more nurturing, culturally responsive maternal health practices. And she celebrates the richness of her Caribbean and African diaspora, spotlighting the places, people, and practices that honor mothers and heals generational wounds. Welcome, Niketa.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, thank you for coming back. So I'd really love to touch on really that whole aspect of trauma, healing, and intergenerational wounds. So, I guess with your background and your culture, tell me a little bit about, what is your take? What is your understanding of trauma and intergenerational wounds?
Yeah, sure. So I am second generation Jamaican, first generation American. And so both my parents were born in Jamaica. And so I actually got the experience of migration, even though I was born in the US. I left the US before the age of 1 to go live in Jamaica with my grandparents till I was about 6 years old. So I spent my formative years in Jamaica. So I got the illusion of migrating, because I don't remember before 1. And so coming here, I got to witness how I had to acclimate and adapt to the culture. I can't imagine if I didn't know the English language. Like, that would have been a whole added layer. Many of our, immigrant communities, that added layer is a huge barrier where you don't know the language here. And so now you're having to learn the language and all this stuff. But I got to see how I had to adapt. I had to acclimate, right, to the American culture. And I saw one of the things that I realized later came from the trauma of immigration into America is my mom as a kid would push me away. I don't think she meant any harm, but she would push me away from the Jamaican heritage in a way that she's like, you're American, speak like an American. Like, she would force me to speak American, even though I, spoke patois and had the accent and everything. She would kind of push me and made me feel like, oh, I'm supposed to be American. And so I acclimated well. I spoke the language already. And so it was just a matter of getting the accent and now doing what all the kids do. And so for me, I didn't realize the traumas that migrating to this country caused until I became a therapist and a mom, and then moved away from Miami. I grew up in Miami, Florida, to Mississippi, which is the deep South. And so if people know about the history in America, the South was, kind of notorious for the struggles of the Black community here. So seeing the difference in Blackness here was eye-opening in the US. And so just seeing how stories are passed down from generation to generation, seeing how a lot of in our Caribbean cultures and a lot of our immigrant cultures, there's a tension that moms and daughters face with each other. Like, it's a tension. And it's something that I've grown to learn about, and I'm still trying to understand it. Like, why is this tension, between moms and their daughters, when in reality, I think it should be this embracing, like, you are a part of me, you're an extension of me, and I'm proud of you. And so working through that tension, and seeing how it played out in my life, my mom's and her mom, and hearing the collective stories that is very similar to mine. So those were some of the things that made me start to kind of dig into, okay, this cannot just be a one per, how if your person experienced like a car accident, that's your one experience. But this idea of intergenerational trauma, it's generations, it's almost collective in, a people, and so, yeah, it's really, really fascinating and really crazy to think about.
We have kind of DNA blueprint that gets passed down, right? I mean, we carry a lot of their values, beliefs,
Yes.
so many of their emotions and what they go through. So I guess, how would you define generational trauma, and why is it so important to address this in the context of even maternal health or when you have your own children?
So I would think of it as a story of pain that has been woven in the womb of your mother and your mother's mother. Um, and sure, it's not just specific to women, but I just feel like there's a sense of carrying it, through, your womb. And so I would say it's a painful story, a painful belief that we carry, this message that we carry and we live out. And where we find the healing is when that person stops and say, this story isn't really true. These thoughts and these beliefs, they aren't really true. And they tap into the power that triumphs that story, And so they, like, even coming from like this idea of Sankofa, like going back to your roots, like it's going back and weaving through the story of pain and the story of defeat, and actually finding the actual strength that you face. And so it's very important, because who wants to live in a traumatic state? One of the things that I noticed in a lot of people who live intergenerational trauma, one of the things I work with so many people of color, and one of the things that's very common, no matter where you are, if you're in Africa, Asia, wherever, is that we struggle with this idea of rest, right? Rest is seen as like a unproductive, bad thing. You don't want to, what are you doing? We
Have
have
your
to fill our
self-care or
time.
rest. Yes.
Yes.
Fill your cup, keep filling your cup. It's till it overflows.
Right. And so I literally ask my clients, like, what is that about? Why are you so uncomfortable with rest? And it's like, well, I feel like I'm not doing anything. There's this guilt. And so, yes, when you are a person that has not, your nervous system, you've come from a history, a generation where your grandmother had to be working to survive. And if she didn't work, you wouldn't eat. If you didn't work, if you didn't move, you wouldn't eat. When you think of our
Yeah.
nervous system and trauma,
Yes.
it's about survival, right? And so that lack of rest comes from back in the day. If you didn't move and do as much as you can and work yourself, you wouldn't eat. You would be homeless. And so the work that I do with clients who are ambitious people of color, is going back and saying, okay, well, we're now safe. The sacrifice that our grandmother, great grandmother, they took, the sacrifice that they made has put me to this place that I now can thrive. I don't have to survive. I now can thrive. And so it's really a lot about unlearning this, because we want to see better for our children. We don't want them to continue in that cycle. We don't want them to feel guilty for rest, because look at the world as its original self, not the world that polluted by people, but the world as its original self. It's made for rest. Like, it is designed. If you look at the world, like,
Even
there's
at
a
day
lot of
7, right?
things.
At least on day 7, it's supposed to be like Sunday is go to church and rest day, right? It's like there's so
Right,
many
the
cultures.
Sabbath.
It's like the day of rest. Yeah, how many
Right.
people really rest even one day a week now?
Right, right. And that's a
Right?
good point. Like, even in that, the faith, like, the God, I don't know, people believe in different things, but God rested, even though he didn't need to, and told people, hey, take this day to rest, because it is such a
Yeah.
vital thing for us. And, but trauma has stolen this thing that was supposed to be a part of us. Like, if you look at the world, like if you look at the nature, it is meant for rest. Like, you're meant to slow down and enjoy. the
And I
nature you
think even now more than ever, I mean, we're in such a fast-paced society. It's always
right.
go, go, go.
Mhm.
And there is our system is so wired and tired,
Right.
and we are so in fight or flight that most people don't even take the time to do self-care or
Right.
to really meditate, mindfulness, even just going to see, like I said, acupuncture, like chiro, osteo, massage, do something that is going to, help you, get back into that balance and take that time. But people are like, I'm too busy. I can't see you for a couple of weeks. Or if you can't even take time out to do some self-care, you're not going to be in the best state possible to help anyone around you. But yeah, it's a society that we're in. And I guess going back to that trauma, it's that generational thing where you have to work hard. They came from farming backgrounds or they were working, slaving away in factories. And it was like first thing in the morning, go out, work, come back, eat, and then you repeat, right? It just, there's no time for rest.
Right.
But I think we're in such a fast paced society that now more than ever, we are so bombarded with information, with
Mhm.
overload. A lot of people are doing double jobs because of the cost of living worldwide.
Right. Right.
And it's tough, right? There's no time for people to rest. It's like I said, it's a guilt. The guilt sets in like, how can I be resting when I should be working or doing something
Right.
else?
Yeah, it's such a curse. It's
Change your mentality, right?
it's
It's like we got to slow down to speed up again, almost in a way, right? It's just to go forward. What are some of the common signs or symptoms of intergenerational trauma that you think mothers really sort of may unknowingly pass on to their children?
That's a great question. Some signs of intergenerational trauma. I think it's like the patterns that you see, I think, one telltale is like you find that your inner value doesn't align with this message that you have been taught. I think if it's practices that doesn't uplift you, I think, this idea of like, especially in like the cultures of color, this idea of having to mask, like you have to mask yourself and you have to present, like in the Black culture they call it code switching, right? Code switching is a huge trauma response, right? Where you're in a space with the majority culture white people and you feel that you have to code switch to be acceptable, or you know
Oh,
it's a
okay. Yeah.
yeah, you have to like talk like the white girl, you have to speak properly, and you gotta
You have to
like
fit in. basically have to fit in and
you have to fit
and
in.
yeah, be someone you're not.
But that's a survival thing because it's like
Yeah.
back in the
You
day,
want to
if
be
you
belong.
yeah, so you want to belong or you want to survive, because back in the day you would, like, for example, I would totally go to an interview with my hair curled. Now I probably wouldn't wear this headband, but back in the day I would flick my hair all the way back here so they couldn't tell. I used to hide my locks. I have locks, and I used to hide my locks because I felt like, oh my
Wow.
God, it wouldn't be professional enough. And so I think when we talk about intergenerational trauma, we are talking about generation from a like familiarity, a familial, sorry, perspective. But it also you have to consider the systemic traumas too, that the message of society and how you have to be. I also think that issue of rest is so important. Like, in some cultures we are, like the helicopter moms, because historically you had to watch your children because it was dangerous for your children to just be children. And so you unknowingly give your children these messages that you can't be. You have to be 10 times better. Like that's a message we hear a lot as people of color. You have to be 20 times better than everyone else or you won't make it, And so you have us working super hard, doubting our worth, doubting our self-worth, because we feel that we have to work a million times harder to be on the same level as someone else. So we have to look at the messages that we find that causes discomfort, causes us distress, because it was meant originally, it had its place. Like, this message isn't bad. It had its place. It was necessary at a certain time. But now you're seeing that. But yeah, intergenerational trauma is this woven thing that's passed down,
Going back to what you mentioned, like changing your hair and that, I mean, if you think back to even Michael Jackson, I mean, he was black, completely
Yeah.
changed his look and went white just to fit in and to, I mean, he obviously had a lot of generational trauma. But I mean, yeah, I think it's just that passing down of the values, beliefs. And if you're not working on yourself, and this is what I do with my clients through something called timeline therapy, where we actually clear generational, intergenerational trauma, but we're carrying a lot of that deep seated beliefs, things that, our parents, our grandparents, it can go back several generations. And that affects the way you're thinking, right? And you're unable to really be able to clear a lot of that, because if they're carrying anger, sadness, fear, hurt, or guilt, any specific limiting beliefs or anything like that, right? It gets carried down unconsciously through, through the generations, and we end up being like them, and we don't want to, but it's in our blood, it's in our genetics, it's in the way we think. So clearing a lot of things.
It can even be in like the way you look. Like there is this thing that's passed down in a lot of people of color. A lot of us, it's the look. The look that your mom gives you, that look like you better that instills fear in a lot of us. And it's just subtle things like the behaviors, like you said, the words.
We end up being like our moms. Like sometimes if we're not aware, like I don't know if you catch yourself, but the way your mother parented you, right? Sometimes like my sister and I remind each other, you're sounding like mom, right? It's like we instantly go, oh, okay, yes, we have that awareness, because sometimes we don't mean to pick up their mannerisms or the way they parent, but it's kind of like that's the only way we know. So if you're not conscious of it, you end up doing things, that are just like them, down the track really. So yeah, it's all the little subtle things. You're like, oh, you take the good things, or you take the things that you thought are going to be beneficial, but you don't want to take, the things that we're like, oh, it's a bit questionable. Like, I don't want to be like that when I be a mom, right? I'm going to parent differently. So you can either, take all the good things, but also come up with, I guess, your own way but healing all of that. If your parents had trauma, if their parents had trauma, which, we all have had at some point, if you've gone through war, if you've immigrated, like we spoke about immigration and like coming to a new place, it's a brand new place. You don't have that safety, security, the language. There is so much that can really be in that way when we're doing a big significant event like moving across, to the other side of the world with no support around you. It's huge, and that can definitely affect their mental wellness, right? It can affect your child. And so let's talk a bit about how like that unresolved trauma can then affect the way you upbring your own, sort of child into the world.
So for me, I think for me, in my family line, there is a tension between women, there tends to be women, like the mothers favoring the men. And so what I seen in my family is I feel like it's unintentional criticism of and just like, very light with the boys. So
Expectation with
yeah,
the
the
difference between
expectation.
the male and female expectations.
Yeah, it's like the girls are heavily criticized, like, you should do this, or why don't you do it like this? And the boys are just like, okay, it's kind of. And so what I find with me is that I tend to want to protect my daughter now. Like I'm protecting her, and I'm kind of a little harder on my son. Like, you need to. So I realize that there's a resentment.
I agree. I think I'm the same with my son and my daughter as well. Yeah. My son, I'm like,
Yeah.
yep, you gotta do this. And my daughter, she's also a really great girl. Like she doesn't cause a lot of trouble, but my son is always like the one harping on her and doing all these little annoying things. And then I'm like, no, she's like this little, and my husband babies her even more. Like he's just her little girl. And it's like this whole protective thing over the girls, I think.
Yes, I think that's what it is. I think our generation is recognizing the trauma, and it's almost like you're rebelling against it and you're going the opposite. But I'm trying to find a balance, right? But I'm wanting to protect my girl, and I want her to know you're beautiful and you're amazing, because I know what it feels like to doubt that. And then my son, I'm like, you better know that you need to, kind of thing. So it's
Stand
like
up for
almost like
yourself and
right.
be confident.
Yeah. And so like I've sat and I think that's a beautiful thing though, that you can see it. Because a lot of times our parents and our grandparents, they didn't see it. Or maybe they did see it, but they didn't have the strength to call it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
They just had to do what all the society was doing and the norm, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you couldn't speak out a lot of the times. Yeah, it's huge. And I guess what are some of the side effects or potential effects a child's development could go through if the maternal trauma or even generational trauma goes unaddressed? Like I've seen things, but I'd like to hear from what you've seen in sort of your line of work. What some of the effects on that child is when parental trauma isn't addressed.
So on the extreme end, you can see a cycle of like abuse, physical, emotional abuse, like the criticism. If there's tension between mom and daughter, like the I've seen a lot of women grow up with like the pain of their mom telling them you're not good enough or no one will ever want you or college isn't for you. And just hearing those words, like the extreme way is hearing those actual words that you're not good enough. I wish I never had you, like those kind of things. And that comes from the trauma. That comes from the trauma of the environment, and it comes from the trauma of this grandmother. Like you always trace it back. You see the trauma living out. If this client comes to me and she is our generation and her mom had some issues, her mom had some issues. And so it just continues on, because if you are blindly living through trauma, you are going to bleed on the next generation. You're just going to happen. Some of the most beautiful things I've seen, though, it's not, I think I've only come across one mother who was a grandmother who came and said, I was wrong. I was wrong. I abused my kids, unintentionally. I yelled at them, I hit them, and that was because I was having a hard time and I was wrong. And I want to heal that. I want to see more of that happen. I want to see more people coming to that and saying, I was wrong. And maybe I did abuse my kids a little bit, and so, yeah.
Especially for the fathers. I think it's
Yeah.
maybe easier perhaps from the mothers, but from a father's perspective, especially if they were alcoholics, drunk,
Oh,
on
yes.
drugs or on all sorts of things. I mean, yeah, it's really hard
Yeah.
for a father to come back and
From that.
apologize because there's that whole
Yeah.
masculine mentality that I don't apologize.
Right.
I'm not apologizing to my next generation, right? I mean, I'm the one that's in so many cultures. It's a man who's in
Yeah.
charge of the house and, anything goes.
Yeah, a part of the trauma is like not wanting to be weak. I think there's an issue with weakness and apologizing and a lot of other things too. Like this idea of weakness, it's like people want to go so far away from that. But in the heart of that is a desire to survive. That's really essentially, if you strip them down to the human self, that inner child, that aversiveness to being weak is really them wanting to survive. And so, like you said, for a lot of men, it's harder because society for years and years have taught us this message that men are supposed to not have any emotions, right? And
Yeah.
so we see that really heavily in certain cultures too. And so, yeah, that is a major thing. Like, you see that in a relationship with the girls and their dads or the boys and their dads. I see that a lot with the men and their fathers in certain cultures. Like they have these wounds where they struggle, they have anxiety, they feel less than because they're having a hard time. And so those are some of the things that people, grow up with you can go from extreme end to maybe a milder end, but yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, trauma impacting a mother's relationship with a child. I mean, there's some huge long-term effects on that, right? And it's like, hear the saying that hurt people hurt people. So if they've been abused, if the father's been abused by his parents, right, or his father, it kind of like it's becomes cyclical, right? Until they
Yeah.
can kind of break the cycle and realize I need to work on this. Like my father had issues, and I've seen it with many of my clients, and
Yeah.
it's like if their parents didn't work on their trauma, and now I think this next generation coming through, like I guess in our generation and our kids' generation, it's going to be huge to see whether it is still continuing, right? Because sometimes it is that whole immigrant society. There's a lot of immigration that's happening now. We're kind of second generation, third generation
Yeah.
in a specific country. Maybe a bit easier. It's different.
We have our new found issues like
Sure.
post pandemic and the digital world. I think
Yeah.
that is going to be our trauma.
Mm.
Like it's going to be the digital world. It's going to be
Yes.
AI, and not AI is not terrible, but
And even kids, like, it's not terrible, but even the kids, like, being so disconnected with
disconnect.
society, they're just always in front of their screens. I mean, they're not out being as physical, and that definitely affects their mood, their
Yeah.
hormones, right? They're not doing as much physical exercise when we were growing up. I mean, there
Yeah.
wasn't any screens. We were forced to go out and play in the garden or at the local park or make up
Right.
games or something. But now when they're bored, it's like screens, right? We
Screen.
didn't have that. And so that can be a huge impact on the way they're handling and maybe even problem solving or doing anything. I mean, they've got answers at their fingertips, whereas we had to work through our problems a lot of the
Yes.
time. And now they can find anything online and they're like, well, I don't need to learn. I don't have to do this. I think society has definitely changed a lot since the launch of the, computer and, internet and all of that. It's definitely
Yep.
different,
Smartphone.
generations. Yeah, I mean, every
Different.
generation has its own shifts, but yeah, it doesn't mean that, a lot of that, even carrying from many generations, like you said, is big. But I guess another thing is the communication. I mean, how does that play a role in intergenerational trauma? I mean, when parents aren't communicating properly, right? And like you said, they don't open up. Men aren't able to talk about their feelings. Mothers aren't able to properly communicate with their teenage daughters and things. And now with online, you can get trolling and so many things. Like even if you're just talking about online, like even now they have to deal with so much more, right? And there's high suicide rates because you post something online and there's a lot of comparison going on. You can see all these beautiful people and people that have got filters. And I mean, there's so much with these
So much.
poor kids growing up, so much, right? But how is that role of communication as a parent important to really helping support the child in everyday, plus also, trying to heal their own traumas at the same time?
So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that the most important thing that you can do as a parent is connect with your child early. Connect,
Yeah.
connect, connect. I think the problem with our parents' generation and earlier, they didn't have the space to connect because connection was broken through trauma.
Yeah.
They had traumatic experiences that broke the space of connection. Because when you're in survival, you're disconnected. You're not connected. But when you're safe, that's when you connect. So they didn't have the space to connect with us. So they ruled with control. Like, we need to get this together. We have to survive. We have to survive.
Survival,
Now,
they're number one.
right.
Yeah.
So now I will say the biggest thing you can do is connect with your child. Talk to them often. Ask them questions. People say that my daughter is so well spoken. It's because I'm constantly talking to her. And I'm not just controlling
Right.
her and you need to do this. I'm saying, how do you
No,
feel
it's
about
just
that?
asking their opinion, like giving them
Right.
choice sometimes, right? They feel
Right.
empowered if you give
Empower them.
yeah.
Absolutely. When you connect with your child, you become a safe space and they trust you. But when
Mm.
you don't connect with your child and you control them, they're not going to trust you. They're going to look for someone else that they feel connected to and they trust. Another thing I think I saw someone say was eventually, and this is hard for me, I'm going to have to go to therapy for this one. Eventually, your children are going to value their peers more. So for
Comes an
you,
age when they're going to that socialization phase, right? That teenage years where they're like, oh, my best friend said this.
my best friend is
It's
everything.
gonna trump what mom says, right? They're gonna be
Right,
influenced because they want to fit in, because they want to
right.
fit. They want to be mommy's little girl, and they want to like please their mom. But as soon as they go to high school, they want to please their friends. They want to be part of the in group,
That's
right? They
their
don't want to
world.
be right.
That's
It's
their
their
world.
world. Their friendship groups are their
Right.
world.
So what I
Yeah.
heard someone say was it's going to be a point where their friends are going to be their influence. So you want to help facilitate the
Yes.
friendships that they have. So you want to bring them around certain kind of
Get to know them, know their
communities.
character.
Yeah. And so that you will feel okay. You will feel a little bit more okay. But you still got to be honest. Like, I think one of my issues with my mom, I love her. I'm not, I don't know. But I think for her, she tries to protect me by not telling me too much. But I think it was a little extreme where she didn't show her human side. I feel like I would have seen her for her more if she showed her human side. But I didn't start seeing her human side until I became a mom. I'm like, oh, this is what that meant. But she presented in a way as the boss. Like, that's all you're gonna see me as, the one who controls. And it was a survival tactic. She didn't want me to be on the street. She didn't want me to be out of control. So she wanted me to fear her. But in
The same with my
reality,
mother.
yeah,
Yeah, it's the
yeah,
same with my mother. It was always
yeah,
control. It's like my way
yeah.
or the highway. I know best. She used to always say, I've had more salt than you've had rice. Like it's a Chinese saying that means like I've walked more bridges than you've walked roads, right? It's like, I know best, mother. Mother knows best, right? And it's like we're at the same level now, right? When you're in your 20s, 30s, and they still think, oh my gosh, I've got the upper hand just because I gave birth to you. I need to tell you
Right.
what's right and what's wrong. I need to tell you what boyfriends are good for you, what's not. Look, yeah,
But
it's
if they would do that in a way that's like, listen, I love you and I don't want you to feel the pain that I felt. I didn't get that from my mom. It was, I'm
yeah,
right, you're wrong, I know
yes,
better.
yes,
But if
totally.
I got the message of, I love you and it hurt me so bad when this happened to me, I don't want that to happen to you, that would be different. That would be a
Totally different way of
connection.
communicating,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah,
yeah.
connect with your kids. That's going to be crucial.
And I think it's not just throwing them an iPad or a screen or anything and going, look, that's, I think a lot of mothers, right? It's just they want to still have their space and they don't want to have that whole, responsibility of being able to connect with them at that time. It's like, yep, I want to do my thing, you do your thing. And then they realize why, there's a whole disconnect later. But kids feel everything. When they're little, they want your attention. And now it's so easy screens. They just put in front of the TV or their screens, and it's like, I'll do my thing. And it's hard. It's hard parenting these days if they're not realizing that their children need this connection more than ever, right? Just because you're on the screens, it's not connecting. But I love what you said about giving the kids empowerment, being able to speak to them on a way that, you're always going to be here for you. Because if they can't trust you now, when they're teenagers, they're not going to be able to come to you with their problems. You're going to lose them forever then.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah, it's true.
So different. It's so important. I think it will come a day when, your kids are how old again?
7 and 5.
Oh yes, mine are 7 and 9. So getting to that age, I
Yes.
think they say now with the girls, right? It's so much harder now with the teenage years than it was. Yeah. And so it's I think we've got to have this whole conscious parenting and just being more mindful of their friends, especially I think boys and girls. It's just as important. Boys will
Yeah.
they might go off on a wrong tangent and yeah, it's tough now. So I guess what can we do as a society? What can we help with our clients in terms of doing in terms of that intergenerational trauma from continuing further? Like I know what I sort of do with my clients. I'd love to hear what how you sort of educate people that are even if they've just had new kids, what they could do to really work on themselves and not be able to pass that on to their children, work with their children. I mean, we can't get rid of trauma, but it's having that awareness, I guess, that is not going to affect their child the same way that some of the trauma may have affected you
Right.
as a person growing up.
So one of our civil rights leader, I think it's Du Bois. I can't remember who did this quote, but he said, "It is easier to raise strong children than fix broken men." So
Oh,
I
wow.
think that we need to really invest in children, really invest in the mental health and wellness and confidence in children. Give them a new message. Give them a message of power. Give them a message of strength. Let them recognize that, okay, you are in a place of thriving. You don't have to survive. What your ancestors went through, that was survival, and it brought you to this point of thriving. Invest in children big time, because it's going to be hard to change abuelita and grandma. It's going to be hard to change them. They're set in their ways, and what I teach a lot of my clients is like how to survive with a very overbearing elder, if they, how to set boundaries. And sometimes it's really going to have to be silent. Like sometimes people have to sacrifice, like ever get an apology. For if some people might value their time with abuelita or grandma or whoever, they might love them, but they know that this issue is just, they're going to always fight about it. And that's how it was with my mom. Like if she
Yeah.
has an opinion, I just say, okay, mom, because I value the rest of her. Like I'm not going to let that thing tear us down. So you might have to ask and evaluate, what are your values in this relationship? Is this relationship worth it? And most people love their moms and their grandmas and everything, and they want to keep that relationship. So the next question is, can you ignore that? Because some of them they're not gonna respect the boundary. Can you just say, I understand what you mean. I get what you're saying. I hear you. I value what you say, and not engage with that. And so that's an individual path, but you got to see where your value's at. And, I think it's important to invest in the kids, invest in yourself. Now, if you're a person that's aware, start to work in healing that message. If it's a message that people can't be trusted or I'm not good enough, start to heal that message so that you can heal the future generation, because it's going to be hard to heal the elders. It's going to be hard to
Oh
change.
yeah, they've done they've learned or not learned their lessons by now,
Yeah,
and I
and
think it's
focus
what
on
you and
what.
your children
Right.
who you
And
can
focus on
influence.
what they say, what they say in power. Because you might find something that you love, and rest in that. Like leave the traumatic story behind and rest in the story of power from them.
I mean, look, our parents did go through a lot. I mean, it was so, like when I see my dad, he ran away from war, and my mum immigrated to Australia with, a few $100s in her pocket. I mean, and to start a new life, didn't speak the language, and that, like, they had this resilience. I had this real strong resilience and willpower and survival and all of that. So take the good qualities, and then, yes, like you said, get rid of the disempowering stories and the trauma and the emotions from all of that. is so crucial. I guess lastly, what advice would you have for mothers who may not be aware of that trauma, who've just sort of come in with their new children or young children, but what can they be aware of from the trauma and they're carrying that, that may not want to be starting the healing process? So, what advice would you give for mothers who may not be aware of any trauma and, not really carrying anything, not really doing anything to start the healing process?
Yeah, I would just say number one, trauma doesn't have to be this really big event like you said, war. I think people have misconceptions about trauma or issues. They think it has to be this huge event, but you can experience something so seems like real minuscule, right? That impacts you over time. So it might be your mom said something jokingly like about your weight, and now you have had body image your whole life because of
Great
that one
issue. Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Takes one
And
moment only, yeah, to
one
cement
moment.
that in your unconscious. Yeah.
And you know how many clients I have that brings me back to that one moment, and they bring it to that person who said it, and that person totally
And then
doesn't
the
even remember.
time, and they know exactly when it was said.
But that person don't even remember saying it. They're like, "What? I never said that." "Yes, you did." And they hold on to it. So I would say we all have a story. We all have something that we're holding on to that is keeping us from elevating to our
Right.
highest self. And
Right.
so what is it that's keeping you back? Even if you feel like, okay, I don't have trauma, we all can grow. And there's
Yeah,
always a story that's holding you back. So what is that story that's holding you back?
figure that out.
What better do you want for your children? How do you want them to see themselves versus what you see in yourself? And work on that. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be this elaborate thing. It's just about growing.
Yeah. Realization, I think that's the number one step. Like realize that there is work. I mean, it never stops. We work on ourselves. Like I work on myself every day, every year. I mean, it's all about growing, right? And then we have children that come into the mix, right? And then second children, it's like, how can we help them to flourish and grow and be their best version of themselves, really? Amazing, Nikita. Thank you so much for that amazing, heartfelt talk. It's so good to really be able to tap into something so deep and profound, but things that people think are not important or they haven't really thought about it. And yeah, just all the tips that you gave for communicating with our kids, connecting. I think this day more than anything, right? In this day and age, it's so important to have that connection with our kids because we don't know with, like you said, AI and all the way that, the world is moving forward and what we've all gone through with the pandemic and all of that. It's such an important time to connect with not only our own family, but even just the wider community and really have that compassion, kindness and understanding and, put all our stories behind and just see how we can be better humans
Yeah.
to other people.
Absolutely. Yes, love it.
Thank you so much, Nikita. All right. Thank you for that
Thank you.
great talk. All
Thank you
right.
so much for having me. I appreciate you
That's all
again.
right. Love our talk. Okay. Thank you for tuning in to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring or informative, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us reach more women like you on their journey to vibrant health and balance. For more tips, resources, or to work with me, visit my social media websites. And remember, your health is your superpower. So keep nurturing it, and I'll see you in the next episode.